Welcome to Alistair Davies Golf. I'm joined today with Mark Bull, who's the top biomechanist in the country, I would say, and we're going to give you an example of what a 3D lesson would look like, utilising Mark's equipment, software, and how we can sort of help pain prevention with the player and also improve their performance, make them function better. So from my point of view, the golf swing works more like I'd want it to do, and from your point of view, how the joints work and how they function from an injury point of view and an efficiency point of view all ties in. Yeah, all good.
You'll see here, Jamie, just a couple of things around that right wrist and that shoulder address. So how, as we described, how downwards, what you call ulnar or downward deviations to that right wrist, and then how that's really influenced by kind of how you sit structurally in and around that right shoulder. So even just initially to give you the animation understanding, this is how you look at the right shoulder, the scapula, the humeral head, that the kind of bony arrangement you have through here, that how forwards and what we call protracted around that rib cage that right shoulder wants to sit, which is one reason why the right wrist then sits in the position it currently does at address. And that's also then reflected by going into some of the numerical values and the data through here, just to kind of highlight one small thing around that right wrist, that like we mentioned, that what these curves and graphs are showing you and I is the function, the patterns that that wrist then moves through in swing. So alongside the awareness of that shoulder joint and alongside how you sit around that wrist, the one thing I'd also like to just to kind of draw your attention to is then how it kind of affects hand and club pass. So you'll see through here, Jamie, that blue are the hands back, purple's hands down, red is club head back, orange is club head down, that how mismatched the hand and club path is in response to how you move around that frame you have, i.e. the right shoulder and right wrist, and then how that causes the response it then does in terms of that hand and club delivery, which is what we discussed in the session. So just to remind you once more of the feedback, which is the audible biofeedback we gave you. The beep today is a good sign, so as and when you do a neat job around that neck in response to obviously doing a better job around that shoulder joint and that wrist at address, when you do a much better job around that neck in transition, you'll hear the tone come on or the head turn green, which are both signs of improved function and improved awareness of you moving in swing, as we'll see here. So the head turning green, the tone coming on is really reflecting and reinforcing what good feels, good function and good awareness are for you. So watch that right shoulder, how it influences the right wrist, and then in response to that, how you work around that neck and upper spine in transition to work alongside the structural stuff that we just discussed. Thanks, Jamie.
So go back to that again around understanding the value of how well you sit through here, that you kind of take the view of what's affecting what, that is it the way you sit around that wrist joint was maybe causing that shoulder to adapt in reacting the way it did? Well, for some that will be the case. Or is it the way you sit through here which causes then a response through here? Certainly around the information that's quite evident with you at how you sit around that wrist is causing the shoulder to respond in the way it did by then moving that way. So I think where you can see some very good gains this morning, I think we can see some very significant gains, is understand the value of how we sit around that wrist elbow and that shoulder joint to the address. And I'd be quite curious then to see what it then encourages you to do through here in response to a much better job through here in address. I think a lot of that, the observations you've made and the feedback that you've given around, excuse me, how you work around wrist, is purely your way of making that start position work. That tone coming on, so look at where you work to start around how evidently the ball went left because of the mismatching through, how we worked around that neck, and then how overactive things then became through here. So you kind of set the expectation, what do I think may happen when I do a better job through here? So what do you think may happen when you do a better job around that neck?
Just obviously fix my wrists, bring my whole body through, and I'm more connected from shoulders and neck.
So as far as the miss goes, obviously it's a long way left at the start of the session. It'd be interesting to see once you do a better job through here whether that still happens. Have a play.
Okay, Mark, just tell me a little bit about what you saw with Jamie's sort of figures, numbers, and how he moved, really.
Two main issues today. Initially, how Jamie sits around that right wrist at address. There's a few things that we had to resolve around his concept for what he was trying to achieve around that wrist position at address, and then how that connected back to some of the structural imbalances Jamie has around that shoulder joint. So a lot of it initially was clearing up some concepts of what he was trying to do and giving us some understanding of how he sits around that joint and setup. And then in response to how he sits and works through here, how it could then encourage some compensations around his neck in the swing, which is why he had the feels that he had and then the flights that he experienced in the swing. So really two things: wrist and shoulder awareness and position, and then how that connects back to how he works around his neck, which will then affect things like club delivery and avoidance of things becoming a problem through upper spine, neck and shoulder.
And would those things be possible to see just with a 2D camera?
Very challenging to see. Certainly get some quantifiable evidence behind this, and one of the big things we use the motion capture information for is to figure out why he moves in the way in which he does. So video will be very good at for providing the outcomes, for example, what the players feel, or certainly what you would see as a coach, but certainly how we use the data to understand why they move in that way. So are there things happening elsewhere encouraging these imbalances to happen? As it was in Jamie's case, that was very much the case.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mark.
Pleasure, Ab. Thank you.